Thank you very much, Jayant, and thank you, Subbu. I must tell you that you require to have lots and lots of guts. Lots and lots of guts to kick the butt of Citibank after being an IIT, IIM and say, I don't want to work for you. Lots of guts to open 1,000 stores when people were not able to open five stores. Lots of guts to run them, take money from the investors, build it up, and face a huge roadblock and challenge. And then have the guts to accept our invitation to come back on a forum like this and come and talk to us about the whole journey of Subiksha. We started off as a small store or one store, went up to what, 2,000 stores?
1,600.
1,600 stores and came back to not zero, and again he's building it up. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, this is a story which is unbelievable. But the ability to come in front of a place and talk and share. I can tell you that I have been associated with IRF in the retail industry for the last 20 years. I have seen hundreds of sessions in IRF, जहाँ पर हम आके कभी ज्ञान देते हैं, कभी बकवास करते हैं, और ज्ञान और बकवास का दोनों का ताली मिलता है. But most of them are futuristic. Like today I just saw, again the panel, all the sponsors are only real estate malls. Okay, and I saw outside when somebody said, boss, I've got one property and there are 6 people vying to sign. So we all talk about, in the air, we want to do these things in the future. But here is somebody who is willing to come and share his experience and take it forward. Subbu, Subiksha means doing good. Yeah? It's all about, the meaning of Subiksha is doing good things. What do you think about the good things that Subiksha did? Because I just met Shriram, who's currently working in Royal Enfield. And he told me that early 1990s or mid 1990s, he used to go to Subiksha to buy his kg of sugar because Subiksha could give better quality sugar at a better price than the ration shop in the city of Chennai. And therefore, he used to go to Subiksha then. So you started doing good from there. Tell us what good has Subiksha done?
See, Nagesh, the perspective of what good we did comes in multiple parts. Our starting point was India is always going to remain a value conscious economy. You should put back to the context of 97 when we started off. Incomes were much lower than what they are today. Media, exposure to media increased the wants of consumers in a huge way. And people were craving for more, which was not necessarily supported by their incomes. Our objective was, in starting this Subiksha retail business was, can we find a way to cut waste and get the same things to the customer at a lower price, so that he has either money left over for something else which he likes to do with it, or the few things that he doesn't buy because he doesn't have the money for it, he can buy from us. This was a very simple philosophy. At that point of time, like today, I guess we would have been renons, would have been sort of students of retail. We would not have known what challenges we had in doing that. The concept was that if we build scale, if we build size, and if we take a hash to costs, then possibly we can make all of this gel and work.
If I translate this into Hindi, can you translate this and say, isse sasta aur sundar kahin nahi milta hai? And if I say Kishore copied your idea, will you agree here on the forum? I'm talking about Mr. Kishore Bihani.
I think ideas of low price, nobody has a monopoly to. I'm saying, known Kishore for many years, and Kishore has said that he was inspired by Sarvana, and I'm saying, and Sarvana was probably closer to what he was doing because it's in clothes and it was in a lot of other things other than groceries. But I guess I don't think we can even say that we were inspired by looking at, say, what a Walmart was doing, or what an Aldi was doing, or what others were doing globally. The issue was not, issue was, can it work in India? If your US consumer, whose per capita are so much higher, wants to save money buying at Walmart, why should an Indian consumer with far less per capita, far more pent-up demand, far more unsatiated demand. Why should he not be able to buy at a Subiksha at whatever is the price saving that a Walmart could give him? This was a theory. This is what we tried to put in practice, and we did, I would think, fairly successfully. If you say what are the good things that we did that quite well. And the biggest thing which caught on to everybody was the fact that we started selling medicines for the first time at a 10% discount. Medicine industry retailing was extremely cartelized. If we sell at a discount, our supplies will be boycotted. Nobody will supply to us. For the first 2 years, we fought all the way from between 97 and 99. We had fought all the way from the Madras High Court to the Supreme Court to assert our right to give discounts on medicines and sell, and to ensure that people would supply medicines to us.
Just tell me one thing. You were gutsy to have kicked off Citibank job. You were gutsy to have started a new concept. You were gutsy to have actually started off fighting the multinationals in pharma to say, I will sell at what price I want. You sell at what price you want. So I buy you at 100. If I sell at 90, who are you to care? And you fought up to Supreme Court. You fought to build the business. You fought with your investors. Is being tough and being gutsy an important competency for a retailer? All these guys who are sitting here.
I'm sure doing what you believe is right is surely important, and having the courage of conviction to drive that through is important, because there are, in any walk of life, whether you're a retailer or otherwise, there are enough people to tell you that what you're doing is wrong or to cause doubts about the path that you're trying to take. But if you don't have the courage of your conviction, then don't try to do it at all. Why try to do something when you don't have a courage of conviction? It's more important for a retailer, because retailer is being in retailing, especially in India, is either like being a person thrown to the lions in old Rome, or like getting into a kickboxing kind of arena.
Hey, just 1 minute. Can you define the lions in this arena? Who are the lions?
I guess as far as the lions are concerned, there are two parts of the lions. The two big lions are, one is the regulatory system.
Okay.
Starting from MRP and saying, as a retailer, as a discount retailer, I allow MRP. It gives me a reference point, it gives me an anchor to fight my battle. But from a pure play retailing point of view, from a development of retail industry point of view, the MRP system is a nightmare. What the MRP system tells you is that you rent property at 200 rupees a square foot in Defcon, or you rent properties for 10 rupees a square foot in downtown Tirunelveli. Your profit margin on selling a product has to be exactly the same. I will not care a damn about your factor cost, that your factor cost in Tirunelveli is different from your factor cost, property factor cost in Delhi. So MRP is obviously one big issue. The second big issue, the second big line, is the dominance of FMCG companies who have, by sheer distribution muscle, ensured that there is no concentration of power in any retailer, and they can work the retail system at a subsistence level of profitability for a traditional retailer who has very low cost structures, which means that any new retail entrant will really struggle to make costs meet in any which way. I think these are the two lines that really are out to gobble you.
What about the venture capitalists, who many of us think they are really venture partners, but sometimes they end up becoming vulture capitalists? So are they also one of the lions, or they are vultures? They wait for you to die and then come and actually eat bones out of you?
Nagesh, my take on that would be that actually they are also like you. They are also fed to the lions, because they are effectively your partners. Sometimes they think they are lions and they start fighting with you, they start attacking you, thinking that they are the lions themselves. But actually my call is that the venture capitalists, many of them are very enlightened people. Some of them take a short-term view on things. But I would say in a broad sense that they are with you in the battle with the lions, rather than being a lion themselves.
That's I think a wonderful statement. Subbu, if you just go back and look at those early days, when you opened 500 stores, 1,000 stores at a stretch, I mean, tell me as a Subbu, as an individual, not the managing director of Subiksha, what all were the influences? What all made you to say, I can open 1,000? You just said conviction. Now, where does this conviction come from? Because I had a similar situation then. There, that time they said, Subiksha is opening 500 stores, Kishore is opening 100 stores, Coutons is open 1,000 stores, and Lilliput is opening 500 stores, and you are the turtle of this business, you're open 2 stores. So where does this conviction come from? Are these the influencers, the customers? I mean, how do we take the decision?
Okay. The story of Subiksha is much better known from the 500 store, 1,000 store arena. But actually, to take you back, we started in 97. At the end of 2 years, we had 20 stores. So the first 2 years are very slow in that sense, because we didn't know it. Not that we know a lot today, but we didn't know anything at all at that point of time in the business. Then from 20 stores, we rapid scaled to 50 stores in 1 year, 99, 2000. 2000, 2001 was another 50 stores, we scaled to 100. And then between 100 and 120, we stayed put for 5 years. Because 20 stores was tough, 50 stores was easy, 100 stores was again tough, because we had gone across Tamil Nadu. And between 2001 and 2006, we said we need to understand how to run a business across multiple stores without knowing who the store manager is, without knowing who the sort of employee is, without knowing who the customer is. It was between 2006 and 2008 that we scaled from 120, 122 stores to 1,600 stores. So all of that expansion.
In 2 years?
In 2 years.
So where did the conviction come from?
The conviction came in 2 parts. One, that we had a model of managing modular units of 100, 150 stores, which we could support with a complete internal infrastructure. So effectively, the idea was 1,600 stores is not one Subiksha. The 1,600 stores is 13 Subikshas, each running independently, sharing symbiotically at the top, but each working like independent units. And that we had a management model to manage 120 stores, and we were clear that we had taken out some efficiencies and we had become reasonably competent in managing that. And we can do that well when there are 13 such facilities created across the country.
But tell me, everybody believes that retail is built by people. It was Subbu who built this 120 stores. Now, were you able to see another 13 Subbus who could passionately build as many stores in every region? I mean, the concept, theoretically, it is fantastic. I mean, you take multiply Subbu by 13, multiply 100 stores, and you have 1,300 stores.
No, Nagesh, the answer to that is that yes, it was a tough call to say how would we get the people to do this. So the issues were that I think fortunately we got people with passion. That was not the pain. Obviously, they had a lot of experience in areas which are non-retail. So translating them to working in retail was a tougher ask. So obviously there was some amount of fit management which had to happen to figure out whether a person would fit into a retail environment, especially a very operationally intensive retail environment like grocery retail. We had a share of mistakes in trying to build those teams. But the advantage was that trying to set up a 120 store unit was a process which used to take us about 9 to 15 months from scratch. And that over that period, you got a huge opportunity to work with those people very closely to understand how they were responding to the challenges. And it was a fairly fitted out team. It was not one person. It was a fairly fitted out team. So yes, there were mistakes. There were course corrections that had to be made in some places.
So tell us, share the mistakes right from recruitment. For example, I personally believe that until unless you have been born and brought up in retail, you have risen from the front end associate and you go and become a store manager. I mean, that rigor you can't get from somebody who has not worked and therefore is not able to connect. So can I make a fair statement to say the first mistake you did you thought that if you are intelligent and you have the best of degrees and work for the best companies, you can come and retail and you can work for retail?
I would say, see, the point is there are other businesses also where there are complexity. Obviously, the scale of complexity is very high because you're directly exposed to the end consumer. The mistake is in a person underestimating the complexity of what all can go wrong. Murphy's law works perfectly well in retail. It works in everywhere, but it works perfectly well in retail. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. People are used to, people who especially who come up from MNCs are used to systems which work. So people needed to change mindset from being 5 days a week to being practically 24/7 or at least 12/7 or 14/7. So I'm saying, but the point was, we made no great promises of a fashion TV kind of life to anybody. We were pretty blunt in terms of telling people what to expect. There were obviously some people who came in driven by the glamour of what was happening to retail, or the perceived glamour of what was happening to retail. But I guess at the end of the day, 75-80% of the people whom we picked in at the senior management level were people who were willing to do the hard grind. And thankfully, most of the pain we had in terms of wrong recruitments were sorted out in the first 6 months, because the pressure was so demanding that people who didn't fit into that style of operation moved out within 6 months. So I would say there was a cost, but the cost was not so intense as it could have been otherwise. So I think we suffered a recruitment pressures. I'm saying that we would have been to recruit X. If the normal recruitment ratio would have been 1:5 or 1:6, we would have been in 1:15 kind of ratios. So obviously it was a lot of pressure on the system, and it is also a lot of transition for the people who are coming in, because from a time when visiting retail meant telling their ASM to arrange a market visit and then go on a visit to the market which is pre-arranged and properly set up. A visit to a store means you every day you are in stores, every day you are seeing the complete chaos that a store is.
Can I cut that and say, Subbu, that it's a mistake to take people from non-retail or FMCG into retail?
Nagesh, I'm saying that if you had a choice of growing over 40 years, like many of the US retailers or overseas retailers have done, you will surely not want to take non-retail people.
But don't you think there is no choice? We have to only grow over 40 years. I mean, we have spent 20 years, you have spent 20 years, the future group has been on 20 years, and every small retailer, a kirana, his business plan is to make money and make money, and every modern retailer's business plan is to lose money and loses money. So in that kind of a situation, I mean, anyhow it's going to take 40 years for winners to emerge.
The point is, the issues of there is a cost at which something can be done. At a particular point of time, when possibly the Reliance mobile license was on a threat because of government policy and Supreme Court cases in 2002, they decided they wanted 10 million customers. They said they will do a monsoon hangama. They gave out a phone to everybody. They wrote off 1,500 crores or 2,000 crores on that. But I don't think the people who did that did not know what they were doing. They knew that if they wanted to scale to that size, they might have thought they would lose 800 crores and might have lost 1,500 crores. But
in your case, when you moved from 120 to 1,600 stores, did you know what you were doing?
We knew what we were doing in terms of what to do to our balance sheet. We reasonably knew what it would do to our P&L. The only budget we did not make, we thought that we would be able to squeeze a large chunk of the P&L damage out of the vendor system. Our budgets would have surely factored in a line called improvement in buying margin, which should have been seen as a scale effect.
Yeah.
Saying that I'm doing 200 crores in Tamil Nadu, and if I do 3,000 crores pan-India, I would surely be able to see better results from the companies. And I would have a 4% kick-up, and that 4% kick-up can kill any of my inefficiencies elsewhere. In reality, that 4% never came, and what came was possibly a percentage or percentage and a half. If you say that in terms of what was not anticipated in 2006, when we said we'll go from 120 to 1,400, there would have been lots of micro things. But the big macro thing would be the fact that a scale from 200 crores to 3,000 crores need not give you that kick up in margin that you are budgeting for, because the guy who's selling to you is comparing this 3,000 crores against 300,000 crores and saying you still are very small. You are not 30,000 crores. Maybe 30,000 crores would have made a difference. But what we expected to be the margin from a Unilever or a P&G or a Nestle was not the margin that we got, even at the end of, at a point in time.
I think there's a fantastic learning for all of us who have believed that if you just add up stores or scale up stores, I mean, margins will come. I've had the fortune in the last 4, 5, 6 months after not being directly so involved with shoppers to see a lot of retailers' balance sheets and look at 5-year plans and strategy. And what you're saying is absolutely right. Almost everybody, even today, says even from 100 to 200 crores, the margins will go up by 10%. So 30 will become 33. So that's I think, a fantastic learning. But tell me one thing. I'm using your background again and again just to say IIT IIM, extremely tough, really ambitious. Then you have an ICICI Venture, which is probably one of the largest investors. Then you have a Kotak Bank, which is the largest investors. How is it that such intelligentsia miss these kind of things? What happens when you are sitting? Because there are a lot of people here who want to actually go and raise funds. So what happens when you say, hey, from 120 I'll go to 1600, they clap and say, oh, wonderful, wonderful, I'll give you money. Or they have a checkbook, agla check, agla check, agla check. How does that work? None of us have been able to get this kind of monies.
See, there are two things. Any investor is an investor for profit. I'm not talking about a strategic investor, I'm talking about a financial investor. He's an investor for profit. The call that, as I said, all of us have great respect for ICICI Venture. They've been one of the earliest in the business. Shoppers had an investment from them. We've had a large investment from them. Thankfully, they also made fairly large amount of profits. They made a very profitable large exit from us. The issue is, with no offense meant to anybody, the real issue is that they are investors for profit. Their perspective is to count and say that these are the numbers that we are looking at with this investment, with this scale up. At this point of time, what would be the potential value of the business? So, from their perspective, obviously they apply a scenario analysis. Excel makes it so easy. So you do all the scenario analysis you want to do, and then you say that, yeah, if this doesn't happen, even if this doesn't happen, this is my worst case value ratio. I will get there, and what I'm looking for is ultimately, from a venture capital perspective, not the health of every single portfolio company of mine. I am looking at the overall health of my portfolio. So if a tsunami were to strike one company, if a black swan event were to hit at one company, it doesn't really matter to me, because I'm saying I'm working on probability analysis. I'm saying that at a 90.9% level of confidence, I'm able to sort of see that this kind of result can work. And I'm okay with that, because ultimately nobody's going to question me on the result I deliver on every single investee company of mine. I have to deliver a portfolio return. Whereas for the investee company, you are not a portfolio investor. For you, it is your lifeblood, and it's the only business that you have. You have to sort of make sure that you do the scenario analysis in a way that you don't make a mistake. So we obviously sort of build our worst case scenarios in various ways. We see whether the margins will happen, what has been the trend, what has been the history, what happens if the margin doesn't happen. So our worst case was that the margins don't happen, we don't make losses. We don't make money, but we don't make losses. We don't make losses. We have a problem with that. Yes, we have a problem with that, but we can run. We're not crippled. So that is the way we looked at it. You can't go by the logic that a venture investor is willing to invest in you. I don't think he's being wrong. Because for him, it's a question of pass the parcel. He has to only be patient enough till he gets the next investor in. If you are building a business only to sell out, then possibly you can also join the queue with him. Then you are not really an entrepreneur in that sense. You are only a venture investor in the garb of a manager.
So Subbu, here, I like this word, pass the parcel. Some of you who are actually building businesses to sell here, I mean, what is the advice that you will give them? If somebody here is now at a stage where he wants to look at an outside investor or venture capitalist, what is your advice to them?
No, I think pass the parcel won't work. I don't think any of us can passionately or seriously build a business to pass the parcel, because genuinely that will only lead to short-term decisions. That will only lead to sort of a warped thinking. And we have to believe that the investors whom we are pitching to are smarter than us. Why I am saying this is, empirically, the top of every graduating class from any of the top business schools lands up with investment bankers and consultants. So if you have to grant them that benefit, then bulk of the better IQ sort of lands up in those jobs. So if we build a business to pass the parcel, we have to be sure that the guy can see through it. Never, as an investor, he can sort of take a call that he can pass the parcel in different ways. As an entrepreneur, I think that's a completely wrong strategy to take, because that hardly ever works out. You may be lucky, but if you trust your luck so much, you can as well go and buy a lottery ticket. Why start a business? I'm saying that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, but in almost a way, you almost thought, or did you think at that time that this was like a lottery ticket? Because from 120 to 1600, suddenly investors are coming and giving a lot of valuations. And suddenly what you thought, and what all of us thought, all of us sitting here, we're actually in envy of you to say, how can this guy really build up things like that? And suddenly it failed. What really led to the failure? And so at what time, in the early stage, you started getting a feeling inside the heart, all of us get, that something is going wrong, but our egos, our own issues, we're not able to either tell employees, because we have built dreams for them. You know, you come and join me, I'll make it into $1 billion company, and you'll become $1 billion company. So heart of heart, how can I go and tell him, boss, things are going wrong, we're going to have a problem? I mean, human nature is like that. So why it failed? At what time did you get a feeling that something is going to go wrong?
Okay. Fundamentally, the issues that we had, nothing was actually a surprise. So it was not, the surprise was something which was slightly external. I'll come to that in a minute. A lot of factors internally were planned out. In 2008, we had decided that between then, 2008, April, and June 2009, 15 months, we would scale up and invest about 1,000 crores into the business between working capital and capex. We were to end March 2009 at 2,300 stores. We had ended March 2008 at 1,300 stores. We were to end at 2,300 stores, and there was a large expansion plan, opening into a considerable retailing business also planned, for which a team had been built. All of this had been budgeted to require an investment of 1,000 crores. Since our capital was stretched, this was to be financed by 400 crores of equity and 600 crores of debt. This was an agreed plan. Dilution to raise 400 crores of equity was also agreed. Agreed as early as Jan-Feb 2008. And we were wanting to make it happen. We were, of course, not under pressure to sort of do it immediately, because in retail, as you know, you don't require money in one day. It's not like a cement plant you put up and then only then you can start. you need money in stages. So you had this sort of ability to sort of time the market. So we were talking to people. That's how one last transaction happened in March 2008. Unfortunately, or for whatever reasons, that money was what we call a secondary. It was an exit by one of the investors. It was not a money which came into the company. It was all part of the prospect, setting up the prospect of raising money for the company. So we knew we needed that money. As part of raising that, or part of planning to raise that money, there were targets for 2009 March. There were targets for 2010 March. And none of those targets can happen if we start work on these expansions post getting the money. Because you are budgeting to get in money between July, August, September 2008. And you are promising to deliver numbers using that money in March 2009, which normally would not have been possible. So the idea was that money will come. So we start investing ahead of the money coming in. And where do you do ahead of money? Obviously, money which is in the system starts getting used for all the funding the expansion. So the money supply gets choked. Normally you would have borrowed more. You would say that you would borrow your 600 crores first so that you can keep that up till the 400 crores comes. Our balance sheet was already leveraged. We had 200 crores of equity and we had about 800 crores of debt, including working capital debt. Banks were clearly of the view that unless they see the equity in the system, they were not going to lend me. And then Lehman happened on September 16th. And then the whole world sort of started collapsing in a way, because there was no way in earth of sourcing any investment, because every one of the investors that we would have been wanting to work with were scrambling to protect themselves, because they were having calls from their investors for withdrawals of monies, and basically sort of the portfolios were devastated for themselves. So there was enough mess happening around. So if you say the key risk we took was in peddling on an expansion on the confidence that the equity of 400 crores would be raised, or in the alternative, some temporary bridge financing or mezzanine money can be raised. What happened post Lehman was not saying that we are at 2,300 crore MC, we need to come down to 1,500 crore MC to raise money. It was that at no MC can you raise money, because the investor had completely fled the market, because they were trying to scramble and save what they could out of their existing portfolios itself. And the banks were already skittish because their debt equity ratios were high, were scrambling to save themselves. We had the spectacle in October 2008 of one of the largest private sector banks in the country. Their CEO had to go on national cable television to tell everybody, investors and depositors, that their bank was safe. That was the situation in October 2008. So when the bank and when the lenders and the banks as a whole were trying to save themselves and were in turn being bailed out by RBI in various ways, the question of their looking at their state of their loany companies was not there at all. So we were it's like there's an you are in an ICU, an earthquake is hit, all the doctors are running away from there, and you're just left in the ICU, and you know what exactly is wrong. You know you had a heart attack, but there's nobody. You know what needs to be done. You know you need to be sort of getting treated for it, but there's nobody to treat you.
Yeah, in fact, this is a very, very unique learning that I have also seen in the last 5 to 10 years. When you want money, whether it is 2008, 2009, or 2007, when market is in bad shape, you really want money. Very few bankers want to put money, and then things come out of it, and you're reeling with cash, and every banker on the earth wants to come and give you money. So one of the key learnings that I see from here is, in fact, there are 2 or 3 learnings which probably is worth capturing. One learning is that you can't work out a future plan based on future cash flow projections, based on whims and fancies of future investors who may come or who may not come. So is it fair to say that it is important for everybody to have a small kitty or a small piggy bank, okay, which you always need because you don't know when you require the piggy bank or when you really require this kitty to use it?
I think, Nagesh, it's perfectly fair. I think investing in the anticipation of capital inflows, investing in the anticipation of revenue inflows is fine. Investing in the anticipation of capital inflows, it might be an investor money coming in. It might be you are trying to sell off a property and then in anticipation of that you are trying to do something. I think is very unsafe. And that level of risk on that is how much risk you want to take on that.
Subbu, I want really you to tell the audience, because something that I have never been able to talk to the audience or such forums is to say, hey guys, you can only grow by so much. And I keep using this word of capability building versus capacity. I mean, India has a capacity to take 50,000 stores. But do you, or does Subiksha, or does me, do we have the capability to take 10,000 stores and build it? No, the fact is that everybody actually pushes you to say, boss, you have the capability. I mean, in forums, you were the chairman of IRF, we were clapping. I mean, I used to envy you in hindsight, not in public forum. It was my image also to say, yeah, this guy is opening 1,000 stores, we are opening 1 store. I mean, what evidence do we need to give people to say, hey boss, please understand your capability, build capability before you build capacity?
Absolutely. I think there are capability point as multiple points. Capability is not only what you can physically do. Capability is what the system can take, what your balance sheet can take, what your infrastructure system, what your ecosystem can take. Because ultimately the point is looking at capability as saying that we built 12 Subikshas and that is 120 becomes 1,600 is one part of the story. But that capability of saying that managing one Subiksha was okay. How do you build a capability? And you build capability to manage each of those 12 Subikshas separately is also okay. How do you build a larger structure to manage the 13 Subikshas that you have created?
No, not only this. In your case, it was 13 Subikshas, 3 or 4 venture capitalists, new investors, and the media wanting to meet the Mr. Subbu who has created 1,000 stores.
All of that, and saying, yes, some structure sense, how do you manage 13 Subikshas? One level. Second level, does your balance sheet have the strength to take it? Now, the point is, if there is 1 rupee of equity and there can be 500 crores of debt, that can work brilliantly, provided the debt is never called. There is no debt, there is never called, because then it becomes equity then.
Yeah.
So, the lesson for all of us is that we need to keep enough equity in the business. The capability we look at as saying that, can I open stores? Can I make it profitable? Can I run the stores? Can I get people? Can I get supplies? Can I get a brilliant idea? Yes, all of that is important. But it's a balance of everything. It is not one of these elements, because any one element comes unhinged.
And you also said it is not about capital, it's not about dilution at one time. It is not that I'm building 1,000 stores, I've got 200 crores, I'm happy, because after 6 months I have to go and ask for another 200 crores and then another 200 crores. So when you're planning a plan and you say, I'm going to increase my margin by 5%, I think you also need to say, as I scale, where will I get my cash from?
Absolutely. And so,
just one question here.
Yeah, sure.
All the new stores which you had planned at that time, did they perform to your expectations? Because most of the failures I see is, you have 100 stores, you open 40 stores, 100 stores are giving you cash flows. The 40 stores we say will break even in 6 months. They don't break even, or they get delayed, and suddenly they start bleeding the existing stores. I mean, so talk about these two things.
Yeah, see, I'm saying, thankfully for us, because we had done this 100 store piece earlier, we had a 18-month ramp-up plan on those 100 stores. I'm saying we never budgeted that those 100 stores would stop performing like these 100 stores which we already had for the last 5, 6, 7 years, when we sort of kicked off those new sets of 100 stores. So that fact was factored in. But you are perfectly right in saying that the ramp-up costs are multiple in retail, because 1 month delay in opening a store hits you from everywhere. Not only from lost sale, but from the sheer fact that the cost is running in that system because your rents are running. You couldn't have timed your people to such perfection that they will come into the store one day before the store opens. If there's a delay anywhere, so you get hit. So there is what we call the contingency budgeting. Has to be extraordinarily careful when you are doing a large scale ramp up. To answer Nagesh's question, surely the new stores will never perform anywhere near like the old stores. Because obviously there is a, especially when you are buying grains and unbranded stuff, there is a gradual adoption curve that the customer shows with you. It is not instantaneous. And it is not that you're not a Steve Jobs selling new iPhones, that people are queuing up 1 week before on outside your store to sort of buy things. You're selling stuff which is available to them everywhere, and it's been available to them the last 40 years. So you're not doing anything new in terms of saying that I've changed the world for you. You're not changing the world for them. You change the world for them in terms of, in our case, in terms of prices. But I'm saying when we do a retail work, we can't believe that we are offering something so compellingly attractive to the customer that all past equations of performance are going to change. It's going to have an adoption process. It's going to have a curve. We need to budget it. How much ever you budget, many of these budgets can be based on templates. The force majeure event in the market, a black swan event in the market, you can't budget for. No. If somebody had told us that there would be a day when you call investors, the same investors whom you are calling, who are calling you 10 times a day, you call them, they won't pick up your phone because they are busy answering their investors' phone calls. You wouldn't have believed it. But I'm saying anybody in the financial market who's lived through 2008 September to 2009 February would know how things were in that phase in the investment cycle, in the investment market.
Tell me, and a man who probably has built this from start and scratch, allegations, newspaper reports, media reports. I mean, there was more reports about you, and at that time probably Satyam happened, and there was a relationship, and they were more of Subbu than the Prime Minister of this country. How did you face this as Subbu and as Managing Director?
See, I think it was very tough for a few days initially, because I'm saying there were two parts of pain. I think you read books, you read what has happened to others, then you realize that you always been told that there is a category of fair weather friends, and when things are good, everybody is with you, and when things are bad, nobody is with you. But obviously when it sort of comes true in real life, it's still very difficult to take, because what is happening is you are ending up people with whom you are partnering and trying to find a solution to the problem are the same people you end up fighting with, which obviously is not very constructive. But the good thing was that as these problems emanated, there was possibly a week or 10 days when there was a lot of introspection. What is it that people are trying to say? If people are saying that we should have been more careful in the way we went up our business, we accept responsibility for that. If people are saying that they did not know anything about what was happening, but they were part of the business in some way, that is not acceptable. If people say that this problem has happened because there has been some fraud or defalcation of the business, that is completely bunk up, that just cannot be tolerated. So I'm saying the idea was to sort of cut it into three parts, saying there are certain things for which we are responsible and we are willing to take responsibility. There are certain things which can't be allowed to be said. There are things which cannot be tolerated at all. We have to put them into buckets and say that at this point of time we need to be completely transparent and open with every stakeholder system. So we went ahead and had a very clear strategy of saying that we will communicate with all stakeholders. We will not hide behind not able to reach, phone was not answered, phone was ringing, not available for comment, nothing. We will answer any question that is put. We will proactively reach out to media twice a day, thrice a day with media updates, and make sure that everybody knows what is happening, what has happened today, what is the news that has been floated about us, what is the truth in it, what is our stance on it. We make sure we transparently communicate. What it did, and we did it rigorously till from February 2009 to April 2009, till this entire frenzy of my being more quoted than the Prime Minister of the country happened. I'm saying till that period was there, we were doing this repeatedly and continuously and truly reporting. I'm saying when there's a day of bad news about us, some court says something which we don't like, which is not good for us, we still put out a media update on that. We say this is what has happened, this is what we intend to do, this is the fallout. So we never avoided anybody, and we stood up and said that this is not something we want to run away from. We didn't do anything wrong.
In fact, there's one learning that again I'm picking up from here. I mean, many of us, we actually do not communicate with our employees, including stakeholders, including media. I mean, when you want to launch a product, I mean, you will send your PR agency and say, hey, come, I'm launching the product. Please talk about it. We'll have a press conference. When the product fails and the media calls up and say, I want to talk to you because the product has failed, you ask the marketing manager, can you ask the PR agency to go across? It doesn't work. Same thing for the employees, same thing for the investors. So I think to keep the communication going, I mean, even for your creators, I mean, if you call up and tell them I'm going through a problem, I'll pay you after 1 week, that is much better than not paying in the system and people running around and doing that. So I think that's a very good learning that we all need to pick up, that if you are in good time or bad time, communicate. Or if you don't want to communicate, don't communicate even in the good time, because you can't use it. Because media is also wanting stories, good stories and bad stories at the same time.
Perfectly right. I think I agree
so
with you.
It all happened. It all collapsed.
No, it sort of, yeah. It happened this way. I'd say the point I didn't answer was what were the signs? What could you have done differently?
Yes.
I think clearly, global markets had peaked in November, December 2007. Indian markets had peaked in Jan 2008.
When you say market, you're talking stock market?
I'm talking about stock markets.
Okay.
And because I'm saying we were looking at investor money. That's why that was relevant to us.
Yeah.
So, in Feb, March 2008, when we were budgeting to raise this 400 crores, the fact that a peak had been reached in global markets, a peak had been reached in Indian markets, Berkshires had collapsed or had been bailed out, was on the verge of collapse and had been picked up by Morgan Chase. So the mortgage crisis in US was a reality. Why all that was relevant was because all that was the money which was coming into India, and what was the money that was supposed to come in and as 400 crores into our system. So the fact that those things are happening, they may be just getting the top of the peak, but those were the first signs that the market meltdown might happen.
So did you stop expanding?
We didn't. That's what I'm saying. Those are the signs we didn't see. We were still comfortable that the market is, instead of 22,000, the market is at 20,000. So what? US has fallen 10%, India has fallen 10%, Berkshires has got bailed out, market crisis is unfolding, rupee, RBI is tightening rupee. But we have such a good story. We have such a long track record of performance. Why would anybody not invest? So and at the most what? If you're expecting 3,000 crore valuation, it will become 2,500 crores.
But will you agree that this is where the entrepreneur's conviction actually starts hurting him? Because you're so convinced about your own self and your own belief that what I'm doing is right, that you're not willing to accept the fact that, boss, there is something wrong, I'm going to fall.
I would say, see, if you look at the sort of broad market, Nagesh, I think there will be two parts to it. It will be the ego of the entrepreneur. It would be the past, you're running on a roll. You have been successful for so many years, so you're obviously not able to see the fact that you could trip. Not to take away any blame from myself on this, but I would say that if you had talked to a cross-section of equity analysts in 2008 March, most of them, I believe, nobody would have budgeted.
Yeah.
I'm saying the few people who took the sort of mortgage short positions in the US are all multi-billionaires now. I'm saying there were very few people who could take those big calls that how the US mortgage market would play out and how Lehman would collapse or I think those calls were possibly with 1% of the guys. So I think we were, in this case, possibly going along with the majority view. But in hindsight, these were the early warning signs. And especially when you are budgeting on future capital infusion, these early warning signs should have been magnified by a factor of 10 and looked at, rather than just looked at. Even we might have minimized it, but it should have been not only looked at as it was, but should have been looked at magnified by a factor of 10.
So Subbu, coming to the last part, after having gone through all this, I mean, I think 1 on million also would not have thought of, I have gone through all these pains, problems, let me get out of this and do something else. I mean, you did fantastic work as a financial, you started products. I mean, before you got into retail, you had a very successful company. I mean, somewhere I read you had 100 crores cash sitting in your company, and people were leaving him because they said, we have 100 crores cash, we don't know how to use this, we have no work to do. So he said, I don't want to be in a business where I have money and I don't have any work to do. So from that situation, you come back again. You're opening Subiksha stores, you opened 9 stores, maybe a different model. So 2 questions here. What gives you the gut to say, I'll come back and I'm going to build again Subiksha, which is very, very critical. And second is, what lessons of the past are you implementing now that you don't have a Subiksha round 2?
I think there are 2009 for all of us at Subiksha was a year of mourning. We had to fight our battles, but like in any mourning, we had to introspect and think of what was wrong. The broad call we came to was in 3 parts. Fundamentally, all of us had conviction in the small store format model. We realized that one assumption, when we went back to the template and compared actuals versus what we had budgeted, the one part of the template which had gone horribly wrong was that kick of 4% delta in terms of supplier inward margin had not happened. Only 40% of that was achieved. So we were very clear that when we make any budget for a new business model to be built back, we had to believe that it had to be working on existing margin levels rather than on future projected margin levels. I'm talking about supplier inward gross margin level basis. The second was that broadly, the single biggest area where there was maximum disconnect between plan and performance was in supply chain performance and IT performance. There, that's where I talked about the complexity of managing one Subiksha of 120 stores versus managing 13 Subikshas of 120 stores. The complexity of managing such a system in an MIS and IT sense, and the complexity of managing a supply chain meant for this was surely underestimated. That was lesson number 2. Of course, the fact that we sort of overstretched ourselves without having enough capital was neither here nor there. It's an obvious truism, so that was there. But we said, as the customer changed, we went back to the market. We did work to figure out, like we did in 96 or before opening the 9 stores in 97. As it fundamentally changed in such a way that discount is no longer relevant to the customer. Is it true that the small format store is no longer relevant to the customer for buying groceries? Is it true that the customer doesn't want discount on pharma supplies? We could find, is it that the customer wants huge stores from which to buy medicines, not small format stores? What came out of that set of research, because we had all of 2009 during the period of mourning to do all this, what came out of all of that was in 2-3 parts. One is the small format store continues to be relevant. In fact, that might remain the FDI beating solution to the market, because that's probably the most complex implementation for any,
Absolutely.
even if 100% FDI is allowed, that may be the most complex implementation for any foreign guy to do. So that remains relevant. But there may be multiple small store formats which are viable, not only a discount small store format. There could be multiple small store formats which could be viable, because the market in 97 to 2009, India had moved a long way in terms of product availability and, more importantly, incomes and aspiration levels. So there could be multiple small store formats possible under different brands with different offerings to customers, operated well and managed well. Does not require, when we started in 97, we were just plugging ourselves to the internet for our first email IDs at that time. Amazon was 3 years old. When we started business in 97, we had not heard of Amazon at that time. We heard of Amazon probably in 99 when their IPO sort of happened. So the amount of cost savings that technology could provide were all factors which we had not sort of deeply ingrained into the business, which we could do now. So the conviction came from the fact that the market exists. This market can better fight potential low-cost capital competition if that was to happen. We had experience in that format and we could do it well. At a small corner of the heart, a feeling that we need to do it to show that the first 1,600 stores building up was not a flash in the pan, and it was the failure which was the flash in the pan rather than the building up of the stores.
I really like this statement. Yeah.
So there was a need to sort of show up that we could do it, and we could do it again, and we could run it successfully, and we learned from our mistakes. This was a piece.
That's really wonderful, Subbu. I mean, if I really look at, I could go on and go on and go on, because there's so much to capture. But maybe 5 or 6 or 7 things that in the last 1 hour we have captured. One is to see that your budgeting also ensures that you taken care of future capital. Second is ensure that you have money in the kitty before you take on. Third is to ensure that you build up capability before you build up capacity. And ideally, if you can build the business from bottom top, nothing like it. The fourth is that when you really need people or bankers or investors or even your suppliers the most, there's a very likely chance that they'll support you the least. And then to say that if you have conviction in the business, you have conviction, you follow the conviction. So what if you failed? Failing was one event. Okay, the conviction is not gone. And lastly, and to me that is a very important thing, for people who say that Subiksha did this, Subiksha did that, and ran away, I mean, no individual will have the guts to come into a forum like this and talk about it. And actually I asked Subbu at the back when we were talking, in a very different way, saying how does he get sleep? And he says, my conscience is very clear. I had not come to do thing which was wrong, and today also I don't believe that I'm doing anything wrong. What has happened for people to know. And therefore I want to share my journey with all the people who are here. I mean, this couldn't have happened unless Subbu was Subbu, and Subbu is Subbu, the Subbu that I have known, and the Subbu that is presented. Thank you very much, Subbu.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.